Hey, Global Game Jammers, my name's Joe, and I thought I'd give you a little behind the scenes of my team and what they're doing. As I am a game designer, I just sit around a lot and drink coffee, right? Is that what we do as game designers? I think that's what we do. Hey, we are associated with the Portland Pig Squad. That's where we're doing the game jam, although I am actually physically in Florida. I usually fly out and I go to my friend's place and we game jam, but unable to make it this year. However, it's been a really cool game jam, and I have been very closely involved with my team. We got 8 people on the team making a pretty neat little game. You can see right there above me on the screen, quality of life. So the prompt was, what does home mean to you? What does home mean to you? I'll get to the game in just a second, but shout out to my team, Mike, Joe, that's me, Alfie, Jonathan, Dylan, Varick, Kurt, and Daxie, who is probably one of the younger game jammers out there. So we came together, 8 people. We got the prompt, what does home mean to you? And we started to brainstorm just like everybody else did. So I joined in via FaceTime or something. I don't know. What's the Google one called? See, that's how technical I am. Whatever the silly Google one is called. Google Hangouts. I knew it would come to me. I knew it would come to me. Google Hangouts. And sat there and listened to them. We came up with all kinds of great ideas. From the very beginning, the team was, it took a while to mesh, but the team was very willing to listen to each other. So I thought that was fantastic. Lots of ideas flying around. And eventually we came to deciding to do a VR game, which is pretty challenging, really. The cool thing is that there's probably 3 or 4 of us that had rigs, all Oculus. So we decided to go with a VR game, Oculus. And obviously the character is a koala. We got Martin the koala. And I don't exactly remember, like many of these things, you don't really remember who said it first. But our youngest member, Daxie, was involved in that as well. And it basically came down to Martin the koala. And he's got a home. Martin the koala's got a home. And then we started talking about entropy. And we started about, what does home mean to you? Home actually changes. You know how they say you can't go home? Well, even while you're living in your home, you can't go home. Your home changes over time. And we talked about, somebody mentioned, you move into a brand new house. Let's say it's even a used house. But when you get there, it's new to you and clean. It's probably been just spick and span cleaned. You move in, and then over the years, things just kind of degrade. Entropy comes in. As much as you try through life, you try to keep your house going. You try to keep everything going. But things around the edge just kind of get older, and you move on. I know that. I'm getting older and not working as well as I used to. So I really did understand that whole discussion. So the reason I bring that up is then we went, okay, Martin the koala lives in his house. He's trying to keep that homey feeling. We talked about some attributes of a homey feeling. Things like safety and security and cleanliness, tidiness. We started coming up with ideas that, all right, let's look at turning this into a game. We'll make those attributes. And you're trying to keep those 4 attributes that we came up with at a relatively high level. But entropy is always there. Time marches on, and you're going to kind of be feeling like you're not able to completely keep up. So you're going to try to keep up your house. You're going to do chores. You're going to do things like you got to wash the dishes. So you got to throw dishes into a dishwasher. What we came down to for a game mechanic idea is you're in your 3D space. You interact with things in the 3D space, and we'll build 4 mini games. That's what we came up with initially. And since it is VR, which is really good for things like bows or throwing or arm motions, we came up with the idea that we're going to have throwing mini games. We wanted to keep the mini games to a similar game mechanic so that we could easily port or more easily port those mini games, with the idea of maybe being able to build 4, basically the same mechanic, but doing a different thing. So one of them was throwing dishes into the sink, which it's got to be whimsical. It's a game, right? You wouldn't clean your dishes by throwing them into the sink. It'd be kind of fun, but you wouldn't really do that. And you get scored by getting the dish into the sink. And while there were 4 mini games, because of entropy and time, you could only pick 3 to do a day. And your attributes that were connected to each mini game would decrease. The one that you did not do would decrease the most. The other ones may increase depending on how well you did on the mini game. So that was the feedback mechanism for the player. If they did well in the mini game, which was throwing things into some kind of area, whether it was a dog bowl for dog food, that was one idea, or into a sink with the dishes, you would pick the 3 that you could work on. If you did well enough, you could kind of start building those attributes back up. The number scale would be from 0 to 10, 10 being the best, 0 being the worst. And at the end of 7 days, so each of the 7 days you would pick 3 of the 4 mini games you could do. At the end of the 7, you'd get a total score and you'd have an idea of how well you kept up your house. If you ever got to 0 or a negative number, then that would be a failed end state that would stop the 7-day. So that was the basic idea of the game that we came up with, and those were all of the elements that we wanted to build. Obviously, we wanted like a start screen, we wanted a couple fail state screens, we wanted the end state screen, we wanted the score to be up on the TV in the 3D room. But I'm not telling anybody anything here that as you move through this and all the big great idea fairies show up and and bequeath ideas upon everybody about how easy it is for you to program this and you to do that and you to take care of this, that eventually you get to the point where you've got to neck it down to what you can do. And we are right now in the very midst of that, because this is Sunday on the last day. I believe it is around 1 p.m. in Portland. It's almost 3 here in Florida. So we're getting down to crunch time, and we had a meeting and we started talking about, all right, let's neck it down to a start screen, the ability to move around in the 3D space, and the ability to play one of the mini games with a score showing up at the end. And I think that's pretty basically what everybody goes through with the Game Jam right here, as you're attempting to bring the team together and understand. It's been a great learning experience. So how did we do that? That's where everyone is. That's what it is that we were doing. So how did we do it? Because we're distributed, and I'm over here in Florida, and a number of our members on the team actually had to go back to their houses because their rigs are there. One of the things about doing the VR deal is it's not as mobile as just, say, a laptop. Now, it can be. If your laptop's good enough, obviously it's not a problem. There were computers there at the lab, but some of us just physically weren't able to get there. You got life. Some of the people had to get back and do things, and that's kind of something everybody works through on the Game Jam. But the good news on that is that we use a lot of the tools, the collaborative tools that are out there. And as you can see, we're doing it in Unity. So I've got Unity up on the screen. How's this work? Over here. So we've got Unity. There's a picture of our 3D space, or the 3D space in Unity. I guess it's a picture of Unity showing the 3D space. That's probably what's going on there. You can see we use Discord, pretty standard. Nice thing about Discord is you can throw files around. There's the ability to do voice chat, and that is how we did our syncs. Probably about every 4 hours. Most of us went home and slept. A couple of us stayed there very late. So it was fairly casual as far as that goes. We didn't have the full-on Game Jam experience of 30 minutes of sleep and everything else, go, go, go. A couple of our members did that, and that's all good. But everybody was perfectly fine with how everyone else went about it. We also use Discord, like I said. So what else do we use? We had Trello. So we had a Trello board going on. I think I can get this thing. Technical difficulties. Well, forget it. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. You don't need to see the Trello board. All right. Just know we had a Trello board. But that was fairly, a Trello board can become kind of the overlord, right? Where everyone's gathering around the Trello board, and by golly, you better move those cards around. If I don't see any Trello card moving, then you're in trouble, kind of thing. This is a casual Game Jam environment, so we had a little bit of organization, but not too much. Just enough, in a couple cases, making sure that we had regular meetings, and we called them syncs, having regular sync ups, and using the Trello board, we were actually able to bring the team back onto the course as one or two of us or multiple of us started wandering off in our own direction right there. And that's important on something that's this short, because you just don't have time to really delve into the weeds in some areas. And sometimes the team has to go, hey, you know what, that's really cool, but we don't need that. Let's move on over to here. And the good news is, because there's another month until the showcase thing, maybe we can also build on some of that as well and get a few more details in there. So those were the tools that we used. And then the last thing I'll show you is just a real quick kind of how the whole thing, the iterative processes went through. We started talking about, Martin the koala. We got a picture of Martin right here. Got a colorized picture. We started talking about color palettes. I will say one of the cool things about this team that I hadn't had before, because all my teams have been relatively small, is we had artists, which was fantastic. We have music for the game, which is really cool. So that added a whole new dimension, which I'm probably not telling a lot of people anything there, but for me, learning that on how awesome that was for conceptualizing what you're doing, to have people who are able to turn out some of that kind of stuff, because that is not me. I wish it was, but it isn't. I thought that was really cool. So we got that going on. We got, hey, the fridge, let's take a look. I like the time right there. Got a little note. Koalas, do you see that? It says koalas right there. That's fantastic. Bookshelf, just concepts on that. We had some little concept of the house, a layout for what the 3D space might look like, some general ideas for that. We decided that as we were going to throw dog food into the bowl to feed our dog, that clearly a koala's dog needed to be a tapir. Is it a tapir? A tapir? I'm not sure. Anyway, that's him. I don't know if we have a name. I called him Spot, but that's just me throwing a name out there. That brings me to another subject, actually, which is kind of interesting. As you game jam and we all get together, sometimes people's idea, if you just, instead of asking and asking and asking, are those TIE fighters over there? I didn't notice there were TIE fighters. That's pretty cool. There should be TIE fighters somewhere involved in this, I think. That's pretty funny. All right, where was I? I have no idea. I'm going to go on. I completely got lost. Okay, there's Martin. Martin, we were talking about a hat. Oh, that reminded me of what I was talking about. Sometimes you don't have time to put the whole team together, so just grab something and go with it. And then just enter it into Discord or Trello and say, hey, we're going to call the dog Spot. And if you call him Spot enough, eventually everyone else will call him Spot. Those little Jedi mind tricks, right? Where we got TIE fighters, you might as well have Jedi mind tricks. This was funny. This one, we were talking about some wall art that we wanted to put in the 3D space in Martin's house. So there's Martin's family. I'm not sure. I think this is Martin. Not sure which one that is. It could be Martin's mom and dad, and that's Martin when he was a kid. Not sure. If a koala had a hat stand, now here's a cool idea that we didn't quite get to, but because it was a throwing mechanism, we said, and we started talking about, let me back up a little bit. At first it was going to be a 2D space, and then when you entered the mini game, you were going to have to put the headset on and enter into the VR, but that was kind of immersion breaking. I don't care too much about immersion breaking, but it was clunky. Let's put it that way. As a UI element and a way of playing a game, it's pretty clunky. So we said, all right, let's walk around in the 3D space, and then when we interact with the item that brings the mini game, it'll seamlessly flow into the mini game as best we can. And that spurned a discussion about some of these games where you can look in the mirror and see yourself, which is really weird. You see your whole avatar, and that the first time I did that, it was kind of freaky, I have to admit, but cool at the same time. And since it was a throwing motion, we said, wouldn't it be neat if we had a fedora and we're standing in the mirror and the throwing motion was throw the fedora up and try to catch it on our head? That would be so cool. And as you're looking in the mirror, I think that would be a lot of fun. So that brings me to here, the hat rack. Obviously, if a koala had a hat rack, it would be a tree-looking thing, right? So we have a little concept art for Martin's hat rack tree hat thing. Dog bowls, clearly the tapir. Is that how you say it? Spot is going to have a dog bowl, so we had some art there. Another layout on what was going to happen there. And then we got eventually to our artist who has created this really cool kind of opening splash page or start page or wherever we're gonna put the art. So it's fantastic. There's Martin and Spot. You can see them both right there. They've been hanging out above my nugget there the whole time. Another concept piece for the 3D, talking about how we're gonna lay that out, which was cool. Now we start getting into the build. The much smarter people than I, making sure that 3D space is in the game. Now this is actually me. I yesterday got hungry, took my son out to. I really should wash my truck. It's kind of dirty, but anyway, we had a big hurricane, so that's my excuse. took him out and went to Moe's for lunch for about an hour so I could take a break. And we were talking about the game, and I said, you should do some voiceovers for us. If we get to the point where we need some voice things, then I'd like you to do it because you make some pretty funny voices. And then we started back and forth with the voices. And I said, what we ought to do is have you do a voiceover instruction for the mini game. It's pretty easy. You pick something up and you throw it. But when you initially spawn in there, maybe you might need a little bit of direction on what you're supposed to do. Most people probably look down, pick up whatever it is, and huck it and figure it out. But anyway, he came up with this, and I thought I'd share this because it's not so much that this necessarily piece of it is the funniest thing ever. It's just that the Game Jam weekend, the iterative creative process, I was driving to eat, just having a chat with my son, having a laugh, talking about what we were doing, throwing ideas around, and then he comes up with this, and I thought, that's pretty cool. And I just recorded this on my phone. It's a video, obviously. You can see my foot there on the dirty truck. But to me, this right here sort of encapsulated the whole Game Jam idea, that wherever you are, wherever you're jamming, whoever your team is, that it's a creative, iterative, back and forth, sharing, cooperative process. And I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, so I've really built this up. Maybe it's not that funny, but I'm gonna show it to you anyway.
Instruction time! Laundry basket, go!
So basically, on the 4 mini games, it was going to come up with that voice, instruction time, and then he was going to tell you what you had to do. Laundry, obviously pick it up, basket, chuck it, go. And really, to me, for game design, in a lot of cases, it should be almost as intuitive as possible until you get to the really kind of grognard games where it's lots of manipulation of stats and numbers and things. And that's cool. People love that stuff too. But for a lot of these kind of more casual games and in general games in general, to me anyway, they should be pretty intuitive to where a 3-word instruction could get you at least started. Even if there's a deeper game mechanic inside of all of that, the basics should be really easy. And the best games to me are set up that way. And game jams are critical for that because you're trying to build a game quickly. It's not going to be it's not going to be able to have too many super deep levels. You may eventually get there if you continue developing the game. The concept may support that, but in order to kick out a proof of concept or just a game, a small playable game in one weekend, for most people, it has to be kind of intuitively simple. Clearly, there's some really brilliant game designers out there who make unbelievable and pretty deep games in 3 days, and that's cool. But for most of us, coming together with a random team of people we haven't met before, we've got to consider that kind of thing. But that being said, thanks for listening to my video. If you got this far, congratulations. I really had a good time. Let me again shout out to Portland Pig Squad. First, Global Game Jam puts this thing together. Pig Squad at Portland, and specifically my team, not my team, but the team I was on. Mike, Joe, that's me, Alfie, Jonathan, Dylan, Varick, Kurt, and Daxie. Thanks so much, guys. I really enjoyed this weekend. I'm hoping we can continue to develop this game a little bit further to at least get it into kind of what I talked about at the beginning, end state right there. Thanks for tuning in. For everybody else, I will hang this on my YouTube channel, and we will see you.